Hi, it's Keith from the Evangelical Free Church Stony Stratford, and we're continuing in our series in the Gospel of Mark. And today we come to chapter 6, verses 14 to 29. Jesus is causing quite a stir. People are talking about him, and they've all got an idea about who he is. Some are saying he's one of the prophets of long ago, and some are even saying he's the great prophet Elijah. But then we come across a man with a guilty conscience. And we read in verse 16, "But when Herod heard this, he said, 'John, the man I beheaded, has been raised from the dead.'" Well, what's the history between Herod and John? Well, it's quite simple. Herod had decided to marry, for political reasons, his brother Philip's wife, Herodias. And John, being a man of God, had gone to him and saying this is quite contrary to God's law. Well, you can imagine that didn't really go down too well. Herodias was furious and was looking for a way to kill John. Herod was kind of trying to appease his new wife, so he has him arrested, but he feared John. We actually read that he feared John and protected him, knowing him to be a righteous and holy man. And he even used to go and listen to him. When Herod heard John, he was greatly puzzled, yet he liked to listen to him. You know, we get an interesting picture here. There's maybe a bit of a spiritual side to Herod. He actually knows that John speaks the truth, but he can't bring himself to do anything about it. Well, eventually Herodias got her revenge. It's Herod's birthday, and you can imagine he's got all these guests there. He's got his military commanders there, high officials, and the wine is flowing. And in the middle of this celebration, Herodias' daughter, Salome, we know that's her name from the Jewish historian Josephus, comes in and dances for Herod and his guests. Now, Herod is so taken with this that he promises her up to half his kingdom. In 1961, I think it was, a movie called King of Kings was released. It's not brilliant. It's about the life of Jesus. I think the critics called it "I Was a Teenage Jesus." That tells you something about it. But there's a scene where the actor Frank Thing plays Herod and Salome dances for him, and you can see what's going on. The lecherous old goat has had too much to drink, and at the end he is besotted, because this would have been the ancient Near Eastern equivalent of a lap dance. It would have been highly sexually suggestive, and the king's senses are inflamed. And so he promises her, he makes this rash promise, up to half his kingdom. Well, she goes to Mum, and what does Mum suggest? Well, that's quite simple. Here's her opportunity. She wants the head of John the Baptist on a platter. We read verse 26. "The king was greatly distressed because of his oaths and his dinner guests. He did not want to refuse her." He couldn't step down. He wasn't a very powerful ruler. He was just one of three that the Romans had appointed as the occupying force. He wasn't particularly well liked, and he didn't want to lose any prestige. It's distressing, really, isn't it? Herod may have had, and I think did, have a spiritual side. He used to go and listen to John, but he couldn't bring himself to do anything about it. You know, a common thing we see in movies today, we're told that the thing to do when there's a dilemma is to listen to our heart. And yet we read in Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9, "The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond all cure. Who can understand it?" Now, if we're honest, we know that's true. I know if I listen to my heart and what my heart wants to get up to, that's not going to be a very good idea. I've actually counselled a lot of people who found themselves in a mess. As a pastor, I've counselled them because they have listened to their heart. I don't think when he listened to John the Baptist said that. John the Baptist's job was to point to Jesus, and he would have pointed Herod to Jesus, the one that would have made all the difference. In 1 Timothy, the Apostle Paul writes this is 1 Timothy 1 and verse 15. Here's a trustworthy saying that deserves full acceptance. Jesus Christ came in the world to save sinners. And he adds, of whom I am the very worst. Paul realised he failed the Lord. I realise I failed the Lord. But there's a remedy for sin, and that's to turn to Jesus, because Jesus will deal with all our sin, our rebellion against God, our putting ourselves first, our listening to our heart rather than listening to God. And we can be forgiven through Jesus' sacrifice, taking our sin for us. Now that's a great promise, and that's a way to have a new start. Thanks for listening. If you're interested and you'd like to, follow what we're doing, you can come and have a gospel. They're on the railings outside the church building, or you can phone me. I'll gladly pop one over to you. They're free, and there's other books there on the railings that you can take as well. Thanks for listening again.